I was over at the U of A, and I was a junior in at the U of A college, and um, they were. I was in a fraternity, and they were having a big party the next day at the fraternity that I was at, and my buddy came down. Uh, Came to Tucson to visit me and help me out because I was the house manager at the time, and uh, I wanted uh, to fix the railing on the balcony of the fraternity. The fraternity was about well, it was 2 stories, but then that third story was a balcony. The fraternity that I was in, it was filmed, or the Revenge of the Nerds movie was filmed at the fraternity that I was in. And if you remember, I'll put a link here, but if you remember, Ogre threw a nerd off of the balcony in that movie, in Revenge of the Nerds movie. Well, that was the exact same balcony that I fell off of. And I'll give you a link so that you can see the balcony that I fell off of. It's kind of a coincidence that the exact I fell off of the exact same balcony that Ogre threw a nerd off of in the movie Revenge of the Nerds. That's kind of interesting. So what we had done, my buddy and I were working on the balcony, and we had got the metal railing around the balcony and put it, took it unanchored it from the balcony, and unanchored it from the balcony, and then we were getting ready to put it back together, I think, and there was a bunch of bees in this tree right next door to the balcony, and I was 19 years old and foolish. I didn't know what I was doing, and so I picked up a small couch or a settee, and well, actually, okay, there was a bunch of bees in this tree right next to the balcony, big tall tree right next to the balcony, and I was young and stupid, and so I started throwing cushions at the tree right next to the balcony to try and scare the bees away, which doesn't do any good because it just makes the bees more mad and makes them fly even harder to, fly around more around you. It gets more dangerous. But anyway, so I think it rained the night before because I was throwing sofas. Well, I was throwing mattresses and chairs and things like that at this tree to try and get the bees to go away, so that they didn't sting anybody that night for the party. And I picked up the last thing I picked up was a settee, which is a small couch, and I had to. It was heavy and bulky and stuff like that, so I had to run with it to throw it at the tree right next to the balcony. And whenever I was running with it, to throw it, then I think the settee caught on me somehow whenever I was throwing it at the tree, and I went over the edge with the settee, over the edge of the balcony with the settee. And I tried hard to grab onto like the gutter from the rain gutter, just whatever I could to try and stop myself from not falling, but it was too late. It was 3 stories, and I fell from the balcony, and I fell 3 stories and landed on my head on bricks which were below. There was a little porch, almost a little patio right below the tree, and there was a bench there, and brick patio. Well, I missed the bench, thank goodness for that, but I landed head first on the bricks, and it hit the left side of my head. I landed on the left side of my head, and the fraternity across the street, the Beta Theta Pi's, one of the members was in pre-med or something like that, so he came over, and there was blood coming out of my mouth and out of my nose and all sorts of stuff, and he turned me over on my side so I could breathe, and it was kind of interesting because when I fell, there was a guy in the fraternity that was actually saw me fall. He was eating lunch, and he saw me fall through the window in the kitchen. He actually saw me fall and hit the ground, I think. But so anyway, the guy from across the street, the Beta Theta Pi from across the street, he turned me over on my side, and I think he gave me mouth to mouth, I'm not sure, but so I was breathing, still having blood coming out of my mouth, but in my nose, but breathing. And then I think my buddy called 911, and this was in 1992, and so the police came or not the police, but the ambulance came from UMC, Universal Medical Center, and they came over, and they took me to the hospital, took me to UMC, and they gave me about a 5% chance of living. They worked on me for many hours. I had a burst fracture of my L1. I had an L1 burst fracture, lumbar vertebrae 1 burst fracture, or it was crushed. My lumbar vertebrae 1 was crushed. The bone was crushed. And so anyway, he made a metal composite. The doctor made a metal composite, and he took shavings from my left hip, and he coated the metal composite lumbar vertebrae, and they put it back in my back, and then they put some Harrington rod, put a Harrington rod on my back to anchor everything together, and then then they gave me like a 5% chance of living, and so I was in a coma for about a month and a half over at UMC, and then I got transferred to Southern Arizona Rehab Hospital, and I was over there for, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks or something like that. Then I started to come out of my coma. So it was about 2.5 months that I was in a coma, and then I was going to an occupational therapist, a physical therapist, let's see, there's another therapist, occupational therapist, physical therapist. Well, anyway, I can't remember the name of the other therapist, but I was seeing 3 different speech therapist. Yeah, because I had paralysis. I hit the left side of my head, and so I had paralysis, a little bit of paralysis on the right side of my body. So I went in, I came out of the coma in about 2.5 months, and then I did rehab, for about 2 or 3 weeks over at Southern Arizona Rehab Hospital. And then after that, then I came home, lived with my parents. I was 20 years old at the time. I turned from 19 to 20. I turned 20 years old when I was in a coma. So that was kind of interesting. And I stayed over at my parents' probably for 6 months or something like that, and then I moved into my grandmother's house. She passed away, and I moved in there not too long after that. Moved into her house not too long after that, all by myself. And I was going to Pima for a little bit. I went to Pima Community College for a little bit, just to kind of get my bearings back, to see if I could handle it. And then I went back to the U of A, and I tried to take the classes that I had taken before, and it was really, really difficult. So I had to throw out totally my my idea for what my bachelor was going to be, and so I changed my major, and I was doing education.